Okay, hello, my name is Dan McKay with Implementation Specialist, and we're going to go over an introduction on getting started with Power BI and how you would use it with Microsoft Dynamics GP. I'll go through the slide deck and we'll do some demos in the Power BI desktop and also online. Our agenda today, I know some of you online, I don't already know what Power BI is, but we will start at the very beginning, explain what is Power BI, where to install it and download it, and we'll review some sample data sets and some sample charts and publishing to a dashboard. So right from Microsoft's Power BI web page, they state Power BI is a suite of business analytic tools that deliver insights throughout your organization. They say suite because it has links into Power Pivot, and in fact it used to be called Power Pivot, which links into Excel, and you create things called measures. We will touch on those in a future version of the future webinar. There are versions for the desktop and also online, which they refer to as the service. You have more features in the desktop version. You're working locally, and the service version is the one that has dashboards that can be shared with other people and can auto-update, auto-refresh. If you have any questions along the way, just call out. We'll stop and address it. If there's something I'm saying that doesn't make sense. Okay. So for the installation, for the desktop installation, there's a download on the Microsoft Power BI website. There's downloads for the desktop installation. You install that locally and run that, and we'll give you something that looks like this. Launches from the start menu. You'll see Power BI desktop. It has a splash screen with the recent sources, recent documents, and some shortcuts, and also some videos, some very handy videos, and what's new, because Power BI is constantly being updated, especially the online version. Anytime there's a change, new features, whatnot, it's rolled out. The online site requires a login. There's a free version, and there are also professional and enterprise versions that are not free. And there's a large library of online documentation, videos on how to do things. So online, it looks like here is some of the Power BI documentation. We can see basic concepts online. What does the screen look like? What are these items on the screens? Getting started, things of this nature. Videos and demos right from Microsoft presentations. Lots of interesting information and to get you started. The download itself for the desktop version, it's not going to let me go to it. I have the link in the slides. You'll have the slides, so you'll be able to do this. You'll be able to get to this. Go there and show you what it looks like. Simply download and install. There's mobile versions for Windows, Google Play, and for your Apple iPhone. Other pieces of Power BI Publisher from Excel, so you can export your pivot tables, charts, etc. right from Excel to Power BI dashboard. Should be a very interesting thing, and we will cover that in a future webinar. Any questions so far? Back to the presentation here. So the login that it requires is a Microsoft Live account login. It's a simple matter. Create the login. You may already have one. Use that, and will allow you to get onto the online website, which looks like this. Here's your workspaces and your items, which we will get to that. The data sets are called Power Queries. And when they say flexible and powerful, you will see you can pull data from an incredibly wide variety of sources. You can pull directly from files, Excel, comma-separated values, XML files, text values, SharePoint, databases, including Azure in the cloud, web page tables, which we'll see a couple demos of that, even Facebook, OData streams. If you have OData sources, you can pull those in, Active Directory, Exchange, and the list goes on and on. In fact, you will see when we get to this Get Data button, there's a search to search for all the different types that you can click from. Oh, excuse me. The data sets are stored in a workspace. This is where we create a data set, we store it in a workspace, and that's where we collect these things for a common use. When we obtain data through Power BI, and I will be doing these demos on the desktop version, we can use a query editor to modify and refine incoming data. We will do a demo of that. I will demonstrate splitting into multiple columns, and you can also see that you can apply filters and formulas and even join with other queries. And some of this more advanced stuff we will save for a future webinar. Okay, so we're going to get some data from a web page. We'll go over, I'll show you, we'll get started, and we're going to go pull some data right out of a web page. So here in Power BI, you can see my Power BI screen here. I'm going to use the Get Data button. So in the interest of efficiency here, I'm going to grab this website from here. Notice that I'm going out to what looks like a stock website. And in this case, you may recognize it's Microsoft Stock. And this is going to a web page. So we'll go out to this web page. So we're going to get some data. I'm going to say more. I saw web on there. I already clicked more. But I can type in web and see that I can get web data. You also see there are a lot of sites or a lot of different formats I can import data from. I can connect to this website, paste in my URL. At this point, it is looking for tables on that web page. So it's going out to that web page. It's going to look for some tables and display the tabular data that it found. And I can preview it here. So this, obviously not what I'm looking for. This, oh, that looks interesting. I've got dates. I've got values. That looks like what I want. I'm going to hit this load button. I will show you what the edit button does on the very next demo. Okay, we will allow this to load. Now you notice over here in the fields, I have the closing price, I have the date, I have the high for the day, the low for the day, opening price, and the volume. And that was for that web data. And we will show you that in a chart. Okay, next slide. So we saw this, 3 months data. Now we're going to do a demo. So you notice here we have visualizations and these data fields that we were just looking at. We're going to pick a line chart from these visualizations, and we're going to just simply drag the data onto the chart definition to display this. So if I pick a line chart and just click on it, I have a line chart here on the screen. I can resize it. And the axis, I will probably want the date. And if I put the closing price in the values, there's my closing price for that date for the last 90 days. If I open this tomorrow and refresh, it will do today's data in 90 days back. At the moment, it's going up to the current data. So So as I refresh this next week, I'll have data that's pertinent to next week. So when we click on this, we can also add the other values to the values just by dropping them on there. I can drop on the rest of these. And so now I see my data along my opening, closing price, high for the day and low for the day. Kind of hard to see, but I can chart this. And we can see some stock data. Now, that data is all pretty close to the same values. You can see it's fairly entwined, and the scale is pretty similar. So we're going to drag the volume to the values field and see what happens there when I start to add data that doesn't necessarily match the same kind of scale. So as soon as I add the volume, here's my original data is this little line at the bottom, because the volume is in the scales of millions, 20 million to 50 million. Well, the other values are roughly between $50 and $70. So that won't do. We don't want that. So we're going to have to change this. And as we probably, if you may have seen on the slide here, unfortunately Power BI does not support multi-axis line charts yet. It is a common request. You'll see the request out there in the how-to sections online. At the moment, they recommend using a combo column and line chart, which we're going to do. So I'll show you how easy that is. We're going to get rid of some of these other items. And with the chart selected, I can just change it to this combo line and column chart. So there we have the column values, and for my line value, I'm going to put the volume. There's my volume on the right axis. The left axis over here shows the column values, so I can see the volume compared with the daily closing price. Any questions on this? Okay. Show you some configuration items. One last one here. On this paint roller, so it seems to me like on every, and I'll maximize this so we can see it a little better. It seems like on every product they have to come up with a new icon for how you can make changes to it. So instead of a gear cog, we now have a paint roller. So we have this paint roller. Now I can change my y-axis. I could change the color of the y-axis to say this reddish color, and at the same time I can change the line itself. All right, where'd the line go? Data colors. I can change the line itself to that as well, to that color. Oh, those are the columns. But that's how you change colors on items and make changes on it. I can add the legend or remove the legend simply with this switch. It is not quite as feature rich as Excel as far as charting, but you can see that it's pretty quick to drop things on there, drag some things over, make some changes, and there you have the data. Okay. All right, I'm going to move on to the second demo, which is editing and splitting incoming data. And I'll confess right here that this is completely inspired by a Power BI demo video. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pop out to the Internet Movie Database and grab the top 250 movies by rating, and we're going to pull that in. And the reason I'm grabbing this one is because the rank, the title, and the year are all stored in one column, which doesn't make it very useful for data purposes, but we'll show how it can split this. When we get into GP data, you'll see that each column has a piece of data. You'll have a lot less reason to do splitting like this because it's already split for you. But to show some of the capabilities of Power BI in pulling in data from almost anywhere, we'll show you this. So I'm going to grab this URL. We'll go through some of the same steps. I'm going to close this. In fact, I'll just exit it. We'll start it up again, rather than saving it several times. Okay, I'm going to mute, put some people on mute here, so we have some background noise. Okay, here's Power BI. I'm going to go back to get data, go right to some web data, go to this IMDb page. Making a connection. In this case, you see there are 3 tables on that page. We'll see document table 0, table 1. I can look at these and see that doesn't look like what I want. That looks like what I want. That doesn't look like what I want, so I'm going to go with this one, table 0. So here we have, as you can see as I preview the data, movie titles and ranks with a year in parentheses. But notice it's all in one column. Not very useful for me at the moment, so I am going to edit this stream on the way in. So here we have it. You'll notice these columns. I have some additional ratings and my rating if I had rated it. Well, I'm not logged in, and I don't believe I've rated any of these, but here's the data. We can, if there's data columns that you don't want, we can simply remove it. Okay, so I'll go back to the slide deck. We've pulled this in. We found the data that we wanted using the preview function. We use the edit, and we notice the first column has rank, title, and year. So there's a split button that will split based on, if you've used this in Excel, this is very similar, split based on a delimiter or based on a fixed number of characters. And we're going to split out the rank. I'll show you how you do that. So I'll select the column. I'll select the split column. We're going to split by delimiter. And I'm going to use a custom delimiter. I'm going to use a period. I'm going to split at the leftmost delimiter, just in case there's a period in the title of a movie. Maybe there is, I don't know, but with this I get the leftmost delimiter. I'm going to split it into a new column. I don't need any special characters. So there it is. I can rename this column to be rank. So there's my rank. Now I want to split this. Now I have the title and the year. So in this case, I would think I will split it on the left parenthesis before the year. So we go back and split by delimiter, custom delimiter with a left parenthesis. And in this case, I'm going to use the rightmost delimiter, also in case there are parentheses in the title. So now you see we have that. I'm going to rename this to be title, and we'll rename this one to be the year. But you notice it's not quite the year because we have a closing parenthesis. At this point, I can do a replace values, find the right parenthesis, and replace it with nothing. Now, okay, this is great. I've just done this. Next time I hit refresh, do I need to do this again? I do not. If you look over here where it says applied steps, it effectively recorded a macro of everything I did. And every time data sources are refreshed, if there are applied steps, it will rerun them in the same order. So I removed a column, I split a column by delimiter, I changed the name, renamed it, split it again, changed what I'm splitting it on, and renamed some more columns and replace the value. So it would do that again on my next refresh. So as if movie ratings have changed, it will pull it in. So now I have this IMDb data in a format that I could actually use. Not necessarily very useful for accounting data, but just an example of how you can split data on the way in. So at this point, I can put in a pie chart and put the year in for the details and the title in for the values, and you'll notice it changes it to count of title. So here I have a pie chart showing me which years have which entries, or which have how many of the top 250 movies. So you can see it starts at about 1921. It looks more like an object of art. In the case online, which I'd recommend if you're interested in this, to go in and look at that, they actually split it out by decade and modify it a few more columns to split it out by decade, and then use the pie chart by decade, which shows some more or a less granular type of information. Okay, I'll pause for questions here. If anybody has any questions, please hit the raise your hand, and I will see that come up. Okay, Heather.
I guess it would have been easier maybe on the previous chart, but because this one, like you said, the legend's a little messy because it's by year, but is it fairly easy to edit the legends? Now this one, the year is kind of short, but in the previous chart, the legends were really long because it had closed stock and then a whole sentence after it.
Right. With the formatter, you can go in and make changes to this, but it is quite a bit more limited than it is in Excel or other charting. It doesn't have quite all of the capabilities. You can make some edits like that. In the case of the legends coming in a column from an external source, you would have to make the edit on the way in and shorten it there. Any other questions? Thank you, Heather. Okay. We'll go on to the next section. So I'm going to close this. I don't need to save it because I have multiple saved versions. Okay, so we did this. We split this. It's more of a recap here. We renamed the columns, and we replaced the right parenthesis with a string. And as you saw, there were these steps to be reapplied every time that data is refreshed. The same steps that we had just created. Okay, now we'll get to the interesting part, which is I don't need to pull data from IMDb or stock. I really want to get it out of GP. So let's do some GP data. So for GP, obviously, we're going to connect to SQL data where the data is stored. We're going to need access from outside of GP, either a SQL service account or integrated security. So if you're running SSRS today or other external reporting items, you will have some sort of integrated security set up. But without this type of security, you cannot access the Dynamics data. You can run a direct query when you're using SQL, or you can import from a table or a view. it displays the SQL views at the top of the list, followed by the tables. And if you've ever looked at Dynamics GP tables and views, you know that list goes on for miles. And we can click on any view or table to preview the data. So we will go back in and take a look. We'll load it here. We're going to get some data. We're going to get it from the SQL server. So you'll see it needs a server name. In my case, I have an instance, and I have a database I'm going to use. And here's where I can use a query or an import. The import is saying I want to just simply point at a table or review and pull in data. Well, the direct query, then you would type in the query, the statement that you want to pull in for more advanced. That's a more advanced feature there. Otherwise, I'm going to actually, for today's purposes, we're going to use an import of a view. And I have a integrated security connection from my network login into my SQL server. So here we're seeing my server name, my database name, which is the company name, and we see this list. These items with the double square are a view. If I scroll down, and there are plenty of views in Dynamics GP, you'll notice these are in alphabetical order. Once we get past the last views, then this that looks like a little grid is a table. So these are tables. I can preview what the data is. Some of these are empty. And up at the top, we're going to go back up to the top and we're going to look at some views. So if I preview a view, like accounts, I'll see these values. See lots of values for accounts. So where did this accounts view come from? Well, for those of you who may not realize this, many of the smart lists that ship with Dynamics GP have a matching view, and the data that goes into the smart list comes from a view. For example, accounts, account summary, and account transactions, those are directly from the fact that you have smart lists with those same names. And these are installed when GP was installed. But any other kind of views can be used as well. And we can use a type ahead feature in the search button to find items without a lot of scrolling. As you can see, there's an awful lot of scrolling. GP itself has 1,700 tables. So start adding other dictionaries, and there are a lot of data to look through. So we're going to select sales transactions, and we're going to load the data. So let's go get some sales transaction data. Here's my sales transactions. And we're going to load it. This is the same data that will be used in the sales transaction smart list. While that's loading, let's go look to see what the next steps are here. We're going to look at the fields. We're going to select a pie chart. And we're going to grab the SOP type to the details and the SOP number to the values. So what we're going to do is create a pie chart that shows how many items do I have in each SOP type. Okay, are we ready? No, we're not ready. Okay. And the database is on my machine. So this would be a time to point out that if you're loading a lot of data from across the network, it might take a little while. Are there any questions so far? Okay, I see Heather has a question. What do we have, Heather?
I always have lots of questions. So this got me interested when you were using the previous chart showing the Microsoft buy and sell amounts. Can
Yes.
you use Power BI to push and pull? So right now we're pulling data into Microsoft or from GP. Could we pull data from an external website and push it back into GP using Power BI?
That's a great question. I will show you what publishing capabilities we have from the dashboard. And that is a great question. I will write down for a future some investigation to see what we can do for a future demo.
Well, to be honest, what I was thinking of was those nasty exchange rates.
Ah, what's a great idea. Oh, thank you, Heather. So if we can look at that, I know that I can push them back to a spreadsheet. But that's
Okay.
a great idea for a future how to grab current exchange rates. Thank you. So here we are with my sales transaction data, and I'm going to make a pie chart, as I had said. So I'll throw a pie chart out here. And I was going to look up SOP document type. So I type SOP in for my type ahead, and you see I have that right here. Now this one here is the SOP number for drill back. So those of you who have looked at views associated with smart lists know that there are many columns that have drill backs back into GP. So that's probably not the one I want. But for the pie chart, I'll put the type here and this number here. And notice that it does a count, which makes sense for a pie chart. We'll make this a little bigger. And you can see we have invoices and orders, most common. Some back orders, some fulfillment orders, some returns, and some quotes. And if we added a legend, we could add these on as a legend. Lots of things you can do with this. So the next steps, I'm going to throw on another chart on here and show you how the charts interact with each other. So for the next chart, I want to add some sort of time-based chart. So let's go back to my slide deck here. So we did these steps, drag the type to the details and the number to the values. So as you see, it's very easy to drag things out and get charts created. So the next steps is we're going to make a new column chart. So and we're going to drag out the date. I'll show you how the date hierarchy works. It's automatic. And SOP number again. So we'll go back to this. So the first step is I need to click away from the pie chart, because if I have the pie chart selected and I click on the column chart, it's going to switch my pie chart to a column chart. It's not really what I wanted. So I put that back to a pie chart, click off of it, and click a column chart. Now I get a new column. Drag this across. Now with a column chart selected, this selection area is set for that particular chart. When I click here, it's for that chart. It's a little confusing at first. Took me a bit to get used to it. So here are the values. I'm going to use the same SOP number, so I might as well drag that down there now. There we go. And for the axis, we want the document date. So here's the document date. You'll see that it's annually. And I have this hierarchy. If I remove the year from this, I can see it now. It is aggregated by quarter. So these are all the quarter ones, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4 across all my years. So this would be quarter 1 from 2014 up to 2018. So at this point, I have these two charts, and these two charts coming from the same data set are actually interactive. So if I click quarter 1 or quarter 2, the pie chart changes to show me what fraction of that pie chart is made up by quarter 2. At the same time, if I want to know which quarter brings me most of my invoices, I can click on the invoice and I can see quarter 1 is the lion's share of invoices, although quarter 4 is almost entirely invoices. In fact, when I hover over it, I can see that it's 24 of 24. I can simply click one more time and I get get it back to normal. So my quotes seem to come from quarter 2. I thought this was a interesting way of looking at things. Any questions on this? Just hit the raise hand button and I'll take a look for it. Okay? So let's go to the next, our next slide. So this is all great because I have it on my desktop. But really with Power BI, everybody hears about, well, I can put it on a web page and other people can look at it. Okay, let's take a look at that. So we'll go to publishing. So in this point, we did these steps. We removed the year from the hierarchy, and we selected columns and pie wages to note the changes in the other chart. So for publishing, if I hit the publish button, all it does is create a Power BI X file on my machine. From the menu, I can select Publish to Power BI, and that puts it into the online version that is associated with my desktop version. My reports can be viewed online in the workspace, and they can be edited online as well. So let's go to the online. Let's go to the online version. So here is that same chart online. I published it up here earlier, and you'll notice the same functionality online. I have my workspaces, my workspace, and I have reports, which we were just looking at. I have a dashboard. I don't have any workbooks yet. I have some data sets. So here's some data sets. I had some account demo from earlier. The IMDb data set is saved up here, and the sales transaction, which we're looking at right now, data set is up here. And notice the stock data set is not saved up here. So we'll go in to the next slide. So in the reports, we'll look at this thing called Insights. It's very interesting automatic analysis of your data that is applied in a report. And it will show a large number of analyses that show outliers, trends, and averages. So let me go through some of that online. So we go to a report. Unlike my sales transaction report, I can view it, or I can look at the insights, which has already been generated. I had already generated this. I don't know why it's regenerating it. I might have to stop this and go to a different one because it takes a very long time to generate these. Let's try account demo. I'm sorry about that. Wow, they must have expired. Okay. I wanted to give an example of some of that. So apparently insights expire after a short amount of time. So we will get back to that. We'll get to some dashboards here. So we will look at that when we have those. So on a dashboard is online only. It is not available in the desktop version. Dashboards, you can have multiple dashboards on your Power BI online site. They consist of tiles. So you add multiple tiles onto each dashboard. So a dashboard is a collection of tiles. And reports in the online version can be pinned to a dashboard as a tile itself, either in an existing dashboard or you can create a new dashboard for any report. Tiles can also contain streaming content, images, text, videos, things from the web. So if there's an instructional video that you want to have, or the latest quarterly report or something like that, you can add it into a tile on a dashboard. And from the dashboards themselves, you can add to favorites, you can share with others, and view on a mobile device even. So we'll go back to, that's my local version, sorry about that. Still searching for insights. We will get to some insights here. We'll go back to the dashboards first. Right. So my dashboard itself, I can see all I had on here was this sales transaction. But at this point I can share it, and I can send it to people via email, and I have some checkboxes that say whether or not I can allow them to reshare my dashboard with others, and I can also send email notifications to my recipients. Another interesting one is this web view. This is what it looks like on the website. I want to know what this looks like on a phone. Here's what it looks like on a phone. So I can preview what my charts will look like on a phone to see if they're even readable. And switch it back to web view. So back on the workspaces, I have my reports. Any of these reports, as you can see on these reports, kind of what Heather was alluding to earlier, I can export. I can analyze these in Excel. Here's where I create my insights. I can view related content. So I can set things that are related so that I can group them together. And I have this time instead of a paint roller, we have a cog. And you'll notice that that changes depending on what type of item you're looking at, or I can delete it. So if I'm looking at a data set, I get a whole different set. Here I can create a new report from an existing data set. I can refresh my data set. So if I refresh this IMDb data set, it's going to run the refresh and it's going to reapply the changes. And in this case, they're looking for the version, the Pro version, which is a paid-for version. So I'm not going to get I'm not going to create a gateway connection. We're just going to do the regular refresh. It wants credentials. Okay, that's on the other data source here. So we'll get to that. But the IMDb data source has been refreshed. Also, I can schedule refreshes. I can tag for other related items. I can analyze in Excel, so I'll push my data set into Excel, which would be something I can examine for exchange rates. It's getting the insights for it right now. There's security settings, and I can also publish this as for something for the desktop use as a PBIX file. Okay, I'm really sad that this insights item decided to refresh. I'll keep going and let it run here. Okay. All right, I'm going to open it up for questions while we wait on that insights. If you have any questions, please call out or raise the hand button. I'm going to unmute everyone. Everyone who I can unmute anyway. So, any questions? Jolene. You have a question, Jolene? I've got you unmuted, but I can't hear you. I may have to take this offline with you. I can't actually hear you on there. Okay, I'm going to go back and see if my insights are done. Wow, I'm sorry about this, folks. So if you do this yourself and you create one of these, even something as simple as the IMDb one, and make a report and bring it out here, you can click on these insights and take a look. Maybe this one will be faster. There's a lot less data. I'm going to try that just just to see if I can get something to show here. I apologize again. I don't understand why. I was viewing these an hour ago. Okay. I will sit on here and wait. We'll see if anyone else has any questions. I'm going to wait on these insights, and if you want to wait, I will bring them up on the screen as soon as one's generated here. Otherwise, I have reached the end here. We went over getting started with installations, online versus desktop, how to select data from website and SQL. We created some basic reports, some basic online views, and showed you some simple dashboards. Here is my contact information. I can answer any emails or questions you have via email, or give us a call at that phone number. And I'm going to wait for some insights here. I'll give it another few minutes. While I'm waiting on this, I had showed some of the documentation, and I'm going to actually look for the insights on here and see if we can get some examples on that. So the insights look like, it's a little hard to see here, but you can see some outliers here on the chart in the middle of the screen. I will increase this. Trying to get it to make it bigger here. You can see that it identifies outliers. It does some data clustering, so where most of the data is clustered. So here we can see a data cluster. If you can highlight over it, and you can pin it to be a visualization on the dashboard. So it generates these, goes across all of the data, says here's some trend data, here's some, in this case we're fitting align to the data that is the clusters. We other kinds of comparisons of this year versus last year. And these are automatic. Just click on it, any trends it can find, anything that sticks out. So in the case of the sales transactions, you'll note that, remember that in the SOP report, when we looked at the report itself, you'll notice that the orders and the invoices there were a lot of, but these others less. So it would indicate that this data is the most that you have, but it would also do it by year. It would take every item that it can and say, here is something that dominates that data set, and here are the items that are less. Wow, I viewed all of these this morning and they popped right up. So I apologize again. I'm going to end this webinar here shortly, and if I get some out here, I will email some pictures of these out with the slide deck to everyone so you can see what those look like. So thank you for attending. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to send an email to me or call, and we'll take care of it. Thank you very much.